Okay, so a very warm welcome this morning to the Partner Certification Kickstart for Data Engineering. My name is Carl, and with me on this session is my moderator, Danny Mack. Danny is one of the partner engineers as well, working closely with myself. So throughout the presentation, if you have any questions, please put them in the system, and we will do our best to try to address your asks. And towards the end of this session, we will also stop for a couple of minutes to see if there are any remaining questions that we will try to address. Okay, so let's dive right into it. Okay, so this is the Partner Certification Kickstart for Data Engineering, and we are currently having the office hours for the third week. And we will be covering these topics on today's session. So essentially your current progress until now, where you have worked some of the material on Coursera and Quick Labs. And we will be also looking at solutions on Google Cloud and some reminders and next steps that you will need to work to be up to speed for the exam that you will hopefully have in the 7th week or soon thereafter. And the fourth thing, as mentioned earlier, will be the Q&A session. Okay, let's dive into the current progress. So here you can see an overview of what we have worked until now. So in the first week, we started to work on Coursera material. We did the GCP Big Data and Machine Learning Fundamentals. There was options to sign up for an additional reading of the book Data Science on Google Cloud Platform. In the second week, we looked on the hands-on lab with GCP Essentials, where you spent around 3-ish hours estimated. And there was also leveraging unstructured data with the Cloud Data Proc on Coursera material that you have worked. Okay, and now for the third week, we will be having material on serverless data analysis with BigQuery and data flow. That is a quite big chunk, and as probably most of you are familiar with, BigQuery is one of the flagship products on GCP. So it is very, very important for this certification. You will likely see asks around BigQuery, okay? And in the third week, we also have the Q&A session and office hours that we currently are conducting. And furthermore, for the rest of the weeks, I won't go through all of them, but you will continue to take the other modules in the Coursera and do more hands-on labs. In week 6, there will be a second office hour session, and this is to help you to get ready before sitting for your exam, hopefully in week 7. Okay, so don't worry. If there are things that pop up on your mind throughout this journey after the session today, please put them in the system in Google Cloud Connect, or write them down and raise them on the 6th week. Okay, so let's look at solutions on Google Cloud. So for big data and analytics, there is a handful of services that you need to be familiar with. Google Cloud Platform's Big Data lets customers accelerate time to insights and leave the complexities of data analytics behind. So Google have been doing this for, I believe, 2 decades, innovating a lot of machine learning and AI, and bring predictive analytics to all of our end users and customer base, okay? And it allows all our users also to build very innovative and creative applications that are highly scalable, reliable, and secure. Here you can see a portfolio of managed services on GCP. So if you look leftmost, in the leftmost tier in the column, you have services that are associated with capturing the data. Then you have processing the data. And following that, you have storing the data, okay? And then you have analyze and using the data. So let's look at the various services a little bit more in depth. These are managed services on GCP. So most of you probably have heard of our globally distributed Cloud Pub Sub, that guarantees delivery of messages. We have a data transfer service, and there's also cloud IoT. So these are ways you can ingest your data. And for processing the data, obviously, you're having Apache Beam, data flow, you have data prep, and you also have data proc. Okay, and for storing the data, we have various data stores as well. We have, for instance, BigQuery if you want to use our analytics data warehousing, or if you want to store it files in our buckets, you can do so on GCS. Or if you want to have it in a NoSQL data store, you can use a Cloud Bigtable for that. Okay, and once you have stored the data, you likely want to analyze and capture insights from the data. Okay, and for that we have tools where you can do either further processing of the data, or you can do dashboarding of the data. Okay, and a couple of things to keep in mind on this slide is that GCP's architecture is it's open, and it's easy to integrate with popular open source tools, and that will allow faster time to value throughout the entire ETL and insight generation of the pipeline. For example, customers can reduce cost and increase performance of Apache Spark and Hadoop workloads by moving to Cloud Data Proc. So Cloud Data Proc is essentially nothing but manage Hadoop and Spark. So if a customer is having Hadoop on premises and they want to move to GCP without changing their code, maybe you can consider Data Proc. Okay, data pipelines built on Apache Beam with data flow work as another choice of open source running Spark and Flint can, for instance, consider to move to cloud data flow. Okay, so data flow will cover both the batch and the streaming. And for all of these services, well, arguably maybe not for all of them, but for most of them, you can choose your familiar language libraries of choice. So we have SDK and library support for Java, Python, C#, Golang, Node.js, PHP, and Ruby. Okay, so business intelligence. So customers want to go quickly from having data to insights and wisdom with a Google Cloud BI solution. Okay, and this is a comprehensive suite of data analytics tools from GCP and technology partners that we work with closely, and it allows for like a flexible environment to gain these insights and derive value from your data. Okay, this environment is not only flexible; it's also like scalable, and it allows for tight collaboration. Okay, so if you want to share things in your Drive or in your projects or in your data studio dashboards, it's really easy to do so. Okay, and the advanced analytics is built into most of these services as well. Okay, the BI solutions tight integration between BigQuery, Google Cloud Data Studio, and Sheets, and partnerships with other BI and ETL vendors translates to a choice and flexibility for users. Okay, and customers use Google Cloud or partner tools to ingest any type of data for analytics. Okay, and that is how they process the data and try to quickly generate the business value out of it. If we for a second look on the pipeline that is behind you and the different kind of choices, you can see that leftmost you have the data sources. So the data source could be already on the cloud, or it could be somewhere else, like in a customer's co-location facility or on another cloud or on premises. Okay, and you want to transform your data in your ETL pipeline. You can use, for instance, Cloud Data Flow for that, or a Cloud Data Fusion, or ingest the data directly into BigQuery. And you also have the managed Hadoop that we touched upon earlier that is called Cloud Data Proc, or you can use with one of our partner integration tools as well. There is a whole set of partner integration tools that works really well with GCP. Once you have the data processed, you want to store it somewhere. Most times, you likely want to end up in BigQuery or in a GCS bucket, depending on what you wish to do with the data after storing it. Okay, so BigQuery that you see here in the big box under warehousing, it is a data warehouse and analytics platform. It's serverless and it works really well. Okay, so if you want to store the data here, you may want to do so for two purposes. So it can either be stored there for further analytics, or if you want to use SQL to query your data, but it can also be stored there for just storage purposes. So if you store data, structured data in BigQuery, after 90 days, the data price will be further reduced as well. So it's like really easy to work with, and there is no servers to manage or nothing. It's like a serverless architecture. Okay, and rightmost, you're having the integration with the different components that we briefly spoke about earlier. You got Data Studio, you have Sheets, and it could also be like other partner visualization tools. You may think of, I don't know, ClickViews, or you may think of Tableau or other solutions out there that have connectors to connect to BigQuery and be able to read the data out from BigQuery. Okay. See here, so moving on to the next slide. So for our customers building data lakes who want to have a choice of putting the data they have captured, we offer the GCS as mentioned earlier. We also offer BigQuery. They can put the data there either in raw state, whether it's structured or unstructured data, and then store it separate from their compute resources, and get away from costly on-premise storage models, which helps you to eliminate the headache of necessarily data pre-processing and constantly trying to design schemas to handle new data types. So decoupling the storage from the compute is an important thing, both when it comes to scalability and to cost efficiency. So we allow you to do that. So as an example, I believe we saw that in one of the earlier slides as well, but when you use Dataproc, you can store your data in a GCS bucket instead. So you can use the cluster for your processing, and if you don't need the cluster anymore, you can remove the cluster and keep the data in your GCS bucket that is decoupled from the compute. Okay, this is very traditionally very different from having a permanent HDFS store running on compute machines that is like just around. Even if you're not using it, it's still around and you have to pay for it. Okay, so let's just go through this brief life cycle. So first, GCP makes it easy to move the data from wherever it lives to the cloud, whether it is in batch or streaming. So that is very important. While traditionally you may have seen a lot of batch workloads, there is also a lot of streaming, especially when you need to have insights in real time. Imagine you're playing a game, or there's some other like IoT devices or something else where you have a lot of data coming in and you want to be able to derive insights in real time. Hence, a streaming pipeline is crucial, and that's something that GCP does really well. Okay. So secondly, Google Cloud Storage is used as a central hub for the data lake where you can store your data. It provides you with strong consistency, high durability design. And Google Cloud Storage multiple storage classes also allows customers to optimize both for cost and availability, allowing you to create a petabyte scale data lakes that are cost efficient. Okay, so again, your data can be a landing zone for your data or a federated store as well. So it's like really decoupled and very efficient in terms of durability and cost. Okay. Thirdly, with the data lake living on top of the cloud storage, customers can choose to process the data in a way that makes sense for their company. Okay, so customers can, for instance, take advantage of the existing Hadoop experience in their organization by using Cloud Dataproc or explore Cloud Data Flow. Okay, and Cloud Data Flow is that it's Apache Beam, and it does both batch and streaming. That is a major differentiator. Okay, and it's in a provides the customer essentially both of these are managed services, and it will provide the customer with a managed services data processing experience. If it is for BigQuery, then it's a serverless experience, definitely. Okay, there's essentially no servers that the customer can see or log into or manage. Okay, and fourthly, BigQuery is used to perform the analytics on the structured data living in a data lake. Okay, and BigQuery works with blazing query speeds. It's scaling very fast across petabytes of data. I think there is some sample data sets online you can try to play around with. And it can be used for multiple purposes. It can be used for dashboarding purposes and to derive business insights. It can be used for reporting purposes. And today there is also built-in machine learning capabilities that can be leveraged with existing skills of SQL programming. Okay, so it's arguably easier to find people who know SQL than who are very deep data scientists in machine learning. BigQuery enables you to leverage the existing skills of SQL to do machine learning on the platform with your data. For those of you who are very interested in this topic, you can, for instance, also look into BigQuery machine learning, BQML, which is a rather new capability that provides you with like very efficient ways of building ML models. Okay, and lastly, customers can leverage the data lake in GCP to carry out data science experiments and to create machine learning models based on the data assets stored either in GCS or in BigQuery. Okay, and the advantage is that really the native integrations with our cloud AI products to do everything from deriving insights from either structured data or images or video assets to customizing and deploying and scaling your tailored machine learning models with our cloud machine learning model engine, CMLE. So it's Cloud Machine Learning Engine, apologies. So yeah, that's a tool that you can use for both serving and to train your machine learning models. Okay, and here we will talk briefly about from ingesting to insight. Okay, so we already spoke about the different phases where you go from the first of getting the data up in the cloud, storing it at a petabyte scale, and being able to process it the way you want. And then the serverless architecture or managed services architecture with BigQuery and Dataproc and Dataflow. These are all components that you will need to be very familiar with for building successfully on GCP and also for their certification upcoming. Okay, and lastly, we spoke about the advanced analytics using machine learning with Cloud ML engine, or if you want to use any of our TensorFlow capabilities on GCP as well. So you can use, for instance, our AutoML and read the data from a bucket, or you can use BQML and read the data from BigQuery or elsewhere where you have it in a federated store. So all of these are things that you can be doing on the platform. Okay, so migrating Hadoop and Spark to clusters to the cloud can deliver significant benefits, but choices that don't address existing on-prem Hadoop workloads and only make life harder for already strained IT resources. So for those of you who have worked with Hadoop on premises, you probably already know that building Hadoop clusters on premises is usually not trivial. You need to have budget approvals, you need to work with procurement, you need to procure assets, you need to deploy these servers, install the software, configure all the knobs. Maybe your data engineers need to help you to optimize the environment. On Cloud Dataproc, you can spin up a cluster in the matter of minutes. I think like in 3 minutes, you will have a cluster up and running. And you can also customize the cluster if you need to bring your own software with startup scripts and other capabilities. And this really allows you to build a Hadoop migration path to GCP and fit your existing needs and future needs. Okay, and let's have a quick look at some common scenarios of customers who are running Hadoop clusters on premise and map their workloads to GCP products. Okay, so here, for instance, we are having a case where the user, the lady has she's supporting non-SQL workloads, and it may be, for instance, where they are using Apache Accumulo, and they may be using Apache HBase. Okay, so for these cases, you may want to consider to either go to Cloud Data Proc that we see upper to the right, or if you go down the path of requiring HBase, Apache HBase, there's a decision that you need to make based on the question whether they need to co-processor or SQL with Apache Phoenix. Okay, and for that you need to consider if they require SQL with Apache Phoenix, then please go to Cloud Bigtable, and otherwise you can help the customer down the path with Cloud Data Proc. Okay, so this is just to give you a glimpse of what a use case may be like. We have more use cases that we will be walking you through. So for instance, the previous one was NoSQL, but this one is around streaming processing. So the gentleman on the picture, he is working on streaming processing data, and his current scenario may be that, okay, I'm using Apache Beam on premises, it's an open source tool, and I want to move to GCP for scalability or security or whatever case there may be. Maybe they don't have enough resources to manage their current environment. And doing so, you should know that Apache Beam is what is running on Cloud Data Flow. So it's a managed Apache Beam essentially, where you can do both the streaming and batching. And for this case, the user is looking for stream processing. Okay, and if we go down to the other fork of the tree, if the user is using Apache Spark or Kafka, you may want to consider to go to Cloud Data Proc, especially if it is a requirement not to change their existing code base. Okay, so this is something that you need to be aware of, whether the customer want to improve during the change or they just want to shift what they are currently having. Okay, for batch processing, we have the engineer on the picture here, the lady, and she's doing ELT or ETL or batch processing. Okay, and the decisions that we need to look at here are for the different scenarios of, like, for instance, if she's using MapReduce, Spark, Pig, or Hive, then please route that kind of use case to Cloud Data Proc that will support all of this out of the box. Okay, and you can also install third-party components. You can install modules from the Apache Hadoop ecosystem as well, or third-party solutions from using custom instance scripts. Okay, and in the case that where the engineer is using Uzi for workflow orchestration, then you can ask, for instance, that are you interested in keeping those workflows jobs as they are? If so, then please go to Dataproc, which would support these modular components of the Hadoop ecosystem out of the box. Or if not, then Cloud Composer. Okay, so Cloud Composer is essentially manage Airflow, and that could definitely be much worthwhile, right? So these questions that you see here, whether they want to keep as is or they are happy to introduce a change, I think are very essential. You need to always try to derive this from the either question stem or from interfacing with your users. Okay, and in this particular case, we have interactive data analytics. So the gentleman here, he want to do ad hoc data analytics and querying of the data. Okay, so the fork of the trees here is, for instance, if they're using Apache Spark with interactive web notebooks, you may want to consider to use our Cloud Data Proc again, that is manage Hadoop and Spark. Or you can do this and then combine it with either Data Lab or our AI platform that will provide you with managed Jupyter notebooks that can be very helpful for data scientists who want to do further processing of the data or derive like insights from the data. Okay, and in the case where the user is use SQL with Apache Hive, Apache Drill, Impala, Presto, or similar tools, then you need to ask a question that, are you interested in keeping these SQL queries as they are? And if so, then please route them down the path of Dataproc. And if not, then maybe consider more a serverless architecture that we touched upon earlier with BigQuery. Okay, moving on here. So, and reminders and next steps. Let's briefly go through what is coming up and where you need to spend a lot of your focus after this session. Okay, so currently we are at the phase of the third week, as I mentioned earlier. You need to work the material that is here. It's crucial that you work through the material on Coursera and that you do hands-on labs. If you haven't finished everything that was in week 1 and week 2, please quickly try to catch up on that when it works for you, and work for this week the serverless data analysis with BigQuery and Dataflow, as mentioned earlier. It is a quite big chapter, and this is very important for our platform and also for the certification, just to reinforce that. Subsequent week, you need to dive into the serverless machine learning with TensorFlow on GCP and building resilient streaming systems on GCP as well. Okay, so this is very, very important. So the whole chain of feeding data from our public message queue PubSub into our data flow that is managed Apache Beam, and it does both streaming pipelines and batch pipelines, and then storing the data somewhere, whether it's in BigQuery for real-time analytics, or it's in a GCS bucket or elsewhere. Okay, for the 5th week, you will need to work the material in Coursera on preparing the Cloud Data Engineer certification. It's a session there you need to spend some time on. And for the 6th week, this is still like quite some time to go there. There's hands-on labs that you need to try to work out. As you can see, the estimated time is below in the boxes. So there's quite a lot of time for each week that you need to set aside or try to split up throughout the week to work the material. For the 6th week, there's also a practice exam that you should try to work through to identify where your gaps possibly are, and try to quickly close those before sitting the exam. Okay, and again, on the 6th week, we will also be having a second office hour with live Q&A that we will try to walk you through with additional guidance and advice for the certification. Okay, so certification exam voucher. So please do complete both the quests that are mentioned here, the GCP Essential quests and the data engineering quest that is coming up soon by August 9th to qualify for your professional data engineering certification voucher. So these exams are quite expensive. It's like $200 if I'm not mistaken. Please check the website for the latest pricing, but I believe it's around $200. So if you do these two, you do qualify for certification by August. You qualify for a voucher for your certification by August 9th. Okay, so very important. Please work through these two hands-on labs. And staying on track, again, just to reiterate, we currently in this week, week 3, completed this session here, the serverless data analysis with BigQuery and Dataflow on Coursera. For next week, work through the in a similar fashion, the next module that is on serverless machine learning with TensorFlow on GCP and building resilient streaming systems on GCP. Okay, and I encourage everybody on the bridge to, after this call, if you haven't already, please go to our GCC Google Cloud Connect, our partner portal, and do the quiz of the week. There are swags that you may win, and I would highly recommend all of you that if you want one of these awesome swags with Google Cloud Platform, please go to the portal and submit the quizzes for this week. Okay, we are now towards the end of the session, and we still have some time for Q&A. So Danny and myself, we will be here trying to help you. So if you haven't managed to ask any of your questions until now, please feel free to put your questions in the system, and we will do our best to answer your questions. Let's see here. I'll just go ahead. Okay. So I have stopped my screen sharing, and we will be looking at the questions here. So I will be reading out of the screen here. So we have a question here from Nirmal, who is asking us, when is the certification scheduled? And the answer from us is that you can schedule the exam anytime. You can choose your date and your location when you submit. And it's very important that you go to this website that is in the Q&A posted here, and you try to read through the material there. And sometimes test centers, usually for all metropolitan cities or most of the capitals in this region, there are different test centers. Make sure that there is times available. So please, as soon as possible, I would suggest you register your certification date or your exam sitting date. Okay, so we have another question here from Chung Xiang. So in DataProc lab of Coursera, I ran into the name task of task 4, but mistyped the command, and therefore the job fails, okay? However, the lab need to check if successful state of task 4. I reran the task correct command, but you still got the same error, okay? And then Chung Xiang first ran a new task with the correct command and got success. Next, reran the command with name task 4 and still got the error as before. And after creating the DataProc cluster and run the task 4 with the correct command and pass the lab, my question is, where is the DataProc job log or state it's stored? Okay, so that's a very good question, Chung Xiang. So thanks for putting that in. And a couple of things here. So we have asked for a few questions here on top of that. I see. So did you get the error from Quick Labs or from the actual GCP console? And just because you get a failure message in Quick Labs, it doesn't mean that your actual job failed. So sometimes I know, for instance, in Quick Labs, when you work through the material, it can be a little bit challenging to get all the checks to be perfectly going through. I have seen that myself. It can be a bit buggy, but it doesn't mean that your job didn't conclude successfully. Okay, so that's very important to keep in your mind. While we don't have visibility on how QuickLab detects pass or fail, a DataProc job, it can be monitored through Stackdriver. So that's very important here, as mentioned in the Q&A. Once you have been submitting your job or entering a command, please try to derive that from Stackdriver. You go to console.cloud.google.com, find your way to Stackdriver logging, and you should be able to select a particular service there and filter the log messages based on that. And I see here that there's a follow-up from Chung Xiang, where it's mentioned that error was got from GCP console with a message that the command is wrong. And if you run the successful job, that name task 4, which I typed. Okay, so it seems that Chung Xiang have added some elaboration here. But as mentioned, we don't have insight in exactly how Quick Labs will derive whether you click on a check button, how it's successful or not. I think more importantly, when you submit the command, please go to the logging interface in Stackdriver logging and try to see what you can infer from the data there. Okay, I think that's very, very important. So again, I apologize for that if Quick Labs check buttons sometimes don't give the expected output, even though you may have typed it correctly or corrected your earlier wrong naming. Okay. So next question here, there's a question from Joy Deep, who is asking, does the Coursera course cover all topics which would be tested on the new data engineering exam? And then If not, what other topics do we need to research? Okay, so first of all, thank you for your question, Joydeep. The training modules in the program and the other certification which cover most of the topics. And there's also a strong emphasis on having hands-on experience with Quick Labs and real project experience. Okay, so really what we are trying to say here, Joydeep, is to work the material carefully, try to leverage all your past experience that you're having, and that will definitely help you. And if you want to have a total coverage of what is in there, you can go to the course outline and read it through, but it can be a bit overwhelming too, okay? What the Coursera material try to do, Joydeep, is to try to cover the concepts that are useful for data engineering on GCP, okay? So conceptually try to prepare you. With that said, it might not cover exactly each and every topic that may be asked for. Okay, so it's very, very important you look at the course outline as well that you can find on the link that is on the screen. Okay, going down here, there's also a post on the Cloud Connect that you may want to look into. Joydeep, you can just follow this link to Cloud Connect and please look at this post. Going back here. Okay, so there's a question here from Kaushik who's asking, as a data engineer job, do I need to know how to create a machine learning algorithm? So it's a good question, Kaushik, and I would argue it depends on what you do as a machine learning data engineer in Google parlance. So in Google, we don't have two separate certifications, one for data science and one for machine learning. And we currently have one that is for data engineering exam. And if you want to work as a pure data scientist, you may want to look more on the TensorFlow and writing your own custom model pieces. If you are more the data engineer who owns the pipeline, you don't necessarily need to write the machine learning algorithms yourselves. It's awesome if you can do so, but usually you don't have to. What Google Cloud Platform also does is that it will help you to give you tools that will abstract away knowing all the nitty-gritty details of optimizing a custom machine learning models, okay? So that's really as part of our mission to democratizing AI and machine learning. So here's a question from Suresh asking, what's the pattern of the exam? Is it multiple choice or theory or both? So I think, Suresh, if you go to the exam web page, you can just Google GCP data engineer, and then you will get there. There's a practice exam where you can see what the kind of questions are, what is the question format, and what answer types you may experience. So essentially, it's multiple choice. Sometimes it can also be multiple answers. You never know, okay? But it is theoretical. You get a question stem where you, and then you have a number of choices of answers, and you click in a checkbox which one. And you can also mark questions for review. So if you feel that there's something that you are uncertain about, you can click mark for review and you can come back to it later. Yeah. Okay. So there's a question here from Gerard Hill on what's the difference between fully managed or serverless? Some products seem to be one or the other. And right now, Gerard is looking at Firestore and is that both, okay? And a couple of things here. So on Google Cloud Platform, we distinguish what is serverless and what is a managed service, okay? So you can think of this as if you are having a Hadoop cluster on premises with all of your physical machines or VMs running Hadoop, you need to install it, you need to patch the environments, you need to do cluster management, you need to do capacity management and all of that. If you come to Cloud Data Proc, you will spin up a Dataproc cluster in 3 minutes. Google will do that for you. Google will configure all the software that is running on top as well. However, you still will have VMs inside of your projects that you can log into, but the service that has been provisioned is managed by Google. Okay, so that is what we call a managed service. Okay, if we take the other case of BigQuery, for instance, it's a serverless architecture. There are no servers visible to the end user. Essentially, you're having an API or an interface, the BigQuery UI, where you will shoot your questions, and then you'll get a response. Obviously, under the hood somewhere in the Google Cloud, there is compute resources, but those are made invisible to the end user. So that's very, very an important distinction that you need to be able to make as a data engineer. What is managed service and what is serverless? Okay, so managed service is a service that is managed by Google, the operations, scalability, patching, and all of that. And if it is a serverless architecture, essentially you will just talk to an API and consume the service. You don't even get to see any of the compute resources. Okay, so moving on here. A question here from Nirmal. Do I need to enroll each week? Do I need to enroll to each week's course? So when you are logged into Coursera, Nirmal, there is different modules and subsections. So to stay on track with the learnings here, it's very important that you try to work each week's module, okay, as per the schedule we shared earlier. So it's the fundamentals and foundations, it's the serverless architecture, and so forth. So for each week, just make sure that you go to the interface in Coursera and you click on the right module and try to work it through. And if you are behind, that is okay, but try to catch up quickly, because otherwise you will have a lot to do towards the end where you want to go and sit your exam. I think we covered the question on when the certification is scheduled. So we covered. Let's see what other questions we got here. Okay, I don't see any further questions. So if you have further questions, please put them in the system. We still have around 5 more minutes. We are happy to address any asks. Okay. So I can't see any more questions on this screen right now. Okay, if there is no further question, just try to work through the material that we shared. Try to stay on track with the schedule. And if you have any further questions, please put them on GCC, Google Cloud Connect. If there is something really urgent that you can't address, please liaise with your partner engineer for your region. There may be a partner engineer who can help you to address any asks that you may have. And also, there will be another office hour session coming up. So if you don't have any questions at this point in time, that's totally fine. Just jot down any questions that you may have later and post them next time we are running our sessions. And I noticed that there was one last question here that popped up from Anisha. So Anisha is asking us whether there will be live labs also on the exam. So the exam is a theoretical exam. So they don't ask you to do solutioning by troubleshooting by using the keyboard and typing in, like hacking the code or anything like that, or building a live solution. It's a question and then there are answers, essentially. So it's like a theoretical in the terms of the nature of the asks. I hope that addressed your question, Anisha. And if you're interested, please go to the official website and read more on the practice exam that is available. And the practice exam should give all of you a brief insight into what the exam situation will look like. Okay, right. Just that when you do the real exam, you can mark questions for review, and you can also notice that there's a timer. Yeah. So when you do the practice exam, there's no timer. So that's very, very important. Okay. So with that said, thank you everybody for dialing in this morning. We truly appreciate it. And we look forward to hear from you soon. And if there's any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us. Yeah. And all the best in your GCP cert preparation. Thanks and bye.